Hi, this is Zach with Worn and Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the new Autodromo Prototipo watches. Autodromo is a brand that we've shown you a few times. They're a very unique brand, one that we like a lot. And their focus are affordable watches with a very strong relationship to automotive history, vehicle racing, things like that. And in their previous two watches, the watch itself has really been developed based on a certain car, a certain history, time in racing, something like that. But these new watches, the Prototipos, actually are paying homages to rally chronographs from the 60s and 70s, brands like Heuer, Omega. And in doing so, he's kind of created these really, really cool pieces that are a throwback to chronographs of an era that's gone by, and frankly, an era where I think chronographs were a lot more exciting. They had more colors in them, the designs were a little bit wilder, they were a little bit more far out. And I think in these watches, Autodromo has really nailed it with the colors, with the use of these barrel-shaped cases, with really nice finishing, with the bicompax layouts. And these also are the first time for the brand to use sapphire crystals, as well as the Seiko VK64 Mecha-quartz movement. We've seen similar movement before. It uses a quartz timing with a mechanical chronograph to kind of have the best of both worlds. So you have the precision of quartz movement and then the actions of a mechanical chronograph on top. We'll take a closer look at that later. We have three watches here to look at. We have the Prototipo kind of open editions, these two, which come in at $625, as well as the Vic Elford special edition. This one was $775. It is unfortunately sold out already at the time of this review. They only made 224 of these, but it's such a great looking watch that we definitely have to show it to you in greater detail. One of the more visually significant elements of the Prototipo is this barrel-shaped case that he went with. In terms of, placing this in history of watches, if you look at the chronographs from the late 60s, early 70s, you definitely will see more barrel-shaped watches, but specifically this one feels a lot like from the Heuer Montreal, which had this kind of lugless design. Sometimes you see ones with little notches in them, but this is kind of very similar to that. And it really just, does not feel like a watch of this era, but it feels very, very cool. And the other really great thing about it that I think is particularly great about the Autodromo brand is the focus on finishing, which I think they achieve a level of detail that other brands just don't in this price range. So looking at it, it's a 42 millimeter side to side with 48 millimeter kind of lug to lug. So it's a fairly large watch, though, given the barrel shape, it doesn't really wear too big. The finishing is really fantastic, as I said. So you have this radial brushing on the top surface, and then a polishing around the bezel. So already there you have a nice little bit of contrast. The radial polishing is particularly beautiful. You can probably see as we move around the light how that kind of throws reflections interestingly. And then looking at the side of the watch, you'll see that it has this beautiful polished line going around every edge of the watch. And that's just a really, really nice touch. It's not something you see very often, especially on a case like this. It's really kind of like very, very clean, sharp line that distinguishes between the brushing and the polishing. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous there. And then the side of the watch also has a brushed finish. One really cool thing also with the design, as you can see here, it kind of bows out on the back. The watch is 11 or 12 millimeters thick here, so it's a nice kind of thin profile. He does this kind of curved back to have kind of more of an ergonomic nature to the watch. It really feels very comfortable on the wrist. Quickly flipping it over then. This version, just the kind of open version, has a very simple case back. But even this, the designer told me, refers to steering columns on certain cars from the 70s, the way these screws are placed, So everything just really is part of the idea of the race cars and, the vehicles from the 70s. Let's see, some other really cool things. The crowns and the chronograph pushers here are especially cool as well, very, very well detailed. So immediately you can notice that the chronograph pushers are PVD, which gives them a nice little bit of contrast. It's something that's quite unique, though actually you might see on watches, once again, from the 70s, but not very often on watches from, contemporary brands. And then the main crown here has a really cool design to it where imagine if you took a perfect cylinder and then cut facets into that. So you have this toothed design that's not really like a coin edge, it's a little different. Then they went so far as to actually finish each facet of that a little bit differently. So it's brushed on the kind of smaller round parts and then matte on the flat surfaces. So, the level of detailing on this watch is really exceptional. Similarly, the chronograph pushers are not perfect circles. They have little flat sides on them, just adding, a lot of really cool little geometric elements to this watch. Quickly, just want to show you then the case back on the Vic Elford Special Edition. Has a little more details pertaining to the race car driver Vic Elford, which this watch was designed kind of with. And it's just a very cool little design. You have this reef around a circuit from a specific race that he did. The dials of the Prototipo naturally stay with this 70s rally chronograph design and really, have this feeling of Hoyers and other kind of like Valjoux 77, 32, and 33 powered chronographs from the era. And a lot of that's due to the bicompax design here, as well as the various kind of indices that are around. So the primary indices here actually is little small kind of white applied blocks that they're actually loomed. The loom is a little faint, but it's still present. And then on the outside of that, you have these kind of color-coordinated markers, which kind of actually give it a little bit more presence than I think even those little applied markers have. So here it's blue to go with these blue hands. And you'll see that on the outer edge. And then between those are the 1/5 second marker indicators for the mechanical chronograph that is in use here. Other really nice elements of the dial. So this version has this kind of panda dial look to it, which is a white face with black sub-registers. And that's, once again, very 60s, 70s, very cool. Then the blue, which kind of plays off of that, and a little bit also plays off of the Hoyer Altavia Joe Siffert models, which had the panda dial and a blue second hand, so it really gives us this vintage feeling. Those two registers here, the one thing that's a little odd, and this is due to the Seiko movement, is that you have actually a 24-hour hand here. It's not an independent hand, it's 24 hours related to the central time. And then you have a 60-minute counter at 9 o'clock. So typically you would have had either a 30-minute counter and a 12-hour counter, or active seconds and a 30-minute counter, depending on the movement you had. So the 24-hour is a little different, but you still get the look. And actually one thing that I do like about that in this version, so without the chronograph running, there's actually no active seconds. So that makes the watch, just feel very still. I actually have a watch from this era that also has no active seconds, so I kind of relate it to that, and it's very, just works really well. This bezel here has this kind of raised bezel, which I believe was inspired by the Omega Speedmaster Mark IIs. And on that you have a pulsation meter, and that's what's in red, then a tachometer in white. And the pulsation meter is actually really cool. That's not something you see very often. Essentially what you would do is you would hold somebody's pulse, you would start the chronograph, you would count to 15, and wherever that lines up would tell you kind of their average pulse within a minute. So that's cool, and that is also a detail that is faithful to watches from the 70s. Lastly on this, you do have the date window at 6 o'clock. I think that's also faithful. I like the way it looks. I love that the symmetry here is really pronounced. It's kept well. And actually working with that too, I think, are kind of these screw details, which are a bit of like an Autodromo brand signature, kind of relating to the screws on tachometers on a dashboard, something like that. And I just like how they balance it out, and they do play off of that window at 6 as well. Taking a quick look at the other color from this model, from the kind of open model. Here you have a black dial, obviously, with silver subdials. This one's a little bit more reserved, but I think also perhaps a bit more legible, even because the white of the indexes there pop out all the more. I really like the red hands here, the red kind of block hands on the subdials. They have a really nice feeling to them. And then the hour and minute hand here are actually kind of like a matte gray, which has a really kind of a nice look. It pops off a little bit without being too bright like a white might have been. So yeah, I mean, between these two of these, I think you actually have a really, really nice set of dial options. The Panda dial might be a little bit more of a wow factor, but this one I think also has a really cool look to it. The Vic Elford Special Edition, which sold out, I think, very quickly, I think for very clear reasons, has a lot more going on with it that celebrates, I think, continues to celebrate the 70s rally chronograph style, but then also celebrates Vic Elford, who this watch was designed in relationship with. So there's a few things here that directly relate to him. It says his name on the dial for one, that's pretty clear, but 224 was actually his race number. And then the coloring is based on the car he used, which was this Porsche 907 that he used in various races. And he's a very significant race car driver. I mean, what I know, I'm not a huge race fan, but that he did, like, he was the first person to win the Daytona 24-hour race in a Porsche. So he has these kind of significant historical milestones behind him. And the coloring on this dial, though, it's really powerful, and I think it's very beautiful and really gives this watch a very different presence. I mean, you don't see color used very often in watches anymore, especially, I feel like affordable watches are all the more conservative, and I think that this and the success of this watch being sold out already really speaks to the fact that people are willing to buy things that are a little bit more risky. Other differences is that this one has an active seconds hand and no date. So this subdial here is the seconds that's just related to the time. You can stop the chronograph there and you'll see that keeps going. It is a quartz, so it is ticking once per second rather than a sweep hand. But yeah, otherwise, this one is cool. It's worth keeping an eye out on forums to see if anyone's selling theirs, if you like it. I really love the coloration on here, the panda, the yellow, the red. It's just a very exciting and fun dial. All the Prototipo watches are powered by this very cool movement, the Seiko hybrid Mecha-quartz movement. It's a movement we've seen once before, and it's a movement which we saw a lot more often because it's very unique and offers something that few chronograph movements or quartz movements do these days. And that is a mix of quartz and mechanical elements for kind of a best of both worlds in an affordable package. I mean, one of the hardships of creating a chronograph for a brand is that automatic mechanical chronographs have gotten very expensive or very, very hard to obtain. Really, Seagull is the only brand making affordable ones, and whether or not you want to use that brand, I mean, that's up to them themselves. But what this one offers, I think, is really cool. So instead, it's a quartz movement, so it's going to be constantly running depending on the battery life. It's going to be very, very accurate, and then it has a mechanical chronograph module on top. And so what's happening there is actually a motor is powering a gear train to give you essentially what a mechanical chronograph normally would have, which is a sweep hand of 1/5 seconds, which gives you greater precision, which is really nice. And then you also have instant reset. So when you stop that and reset it, it doesn't go all the way around like quartz chronographs typically do, which is kind of a frustrating thing on quartz chronographs. Clearly you can't reset and start again really fast, something like that. So it's really, exactly, it's just the best of both worlds here, and it keeps the price affordable. This movement also has a 60-minute register at 9 o'clock. A lot of mechanical chronographs have 30-minute registers. And 60 is just much more practical. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a 12-hour counter, though. Instead, you have a 24-hour just time. So that just relates to, on a 24-hour military time, what the current time zone is. Then depending on the model here, we are showing you on the Vic Elford, you have active seconds, or on the other models, you have a date and no active seconds. On the wrist, the Autodromo Prototipo wears exceptionally well. I think the 42mm by 48 size feels really, really nice, especially with the barrel shape. It's definitely a sizable watch, but I don't think it's oversized at all. It feels very well in proportion. Everything from the dial to the case, it just, works quite, exactly as it should. And on the wrist, I mean, this thing is just so gorgeous. I mean, personally, I am a fan of vintage chronographs. If I were to collect one type of watch, it would just be kind of chronographs from this era, so it really does speak to me. But, I think anyone who is into chronographs will probably like these. And when you see them on the wrist, the design of them is just, proportions are perfect. There's restraint used, so, you feel like they got it to just that right point without going overboard, using too much of anything or too little of anything. And then the finishing on this watch, I mean, when it's on your wrist, I wore this actually quite a lot. And I kept ogling. I just kept looking at this beautiful polished line, the beautiful sunburst there, the drop from the bezel down to the dial. It just makes for just such a really handsome watch. The colorations, the various versions, I think I was most drawn to this version just for my personal preferences and style, but I think the other colors work really well. Definitely the Vic Elford version here gives you a little bit more pop. Whereas the darker version here is a little bit more subdued, a little bit more restrained. Either way, I don't think that, I think that they all look really, really great. The watch features a 20mm rally style strap. Once again, perfect strap for this watch. It's a really, really nice strap, has a very comfortable feel, a little bit of padding in there, and it has a slightly kind of glossy finish to it that looks nice. Then you have an Autodromo signed thumbnail buckle here. Just works perfectly with the watch. I'll just quickly show you once again the Vic Elford has a slightly different style strap. It's more of a matte black and it has a big hole rally style, which is just a much more aggressive look to it. Also very cool and very faithful to the era. So I just quickly want to show you the packaging that the Autodromo Prototipos come in. Autodromo puts a lot of emphasis on their packaging, and I happen to think they do an exceptional job. So this Vic Elford edition comes in this really, really beautiful outer box. It's this full bleed print from a poster with Vic Elford on it. It's a really dramatic box, definitely gets you excited for what's inside of it. And then looking in, you have this beautiful package, and this is very similar to what we saw with the Autodromo Monoposto, but it's white, and it has this cool golden wreath on it, which celebrates Vic Elford's win at the Targa Florio track in 1968. And then you open that up and you have this beautiful presentation here. It comes with this great book, which I got to show you really quickly. This great book that kind of tells you a little bit about Vic Elford's career, and it does so. Oh, it's also signed by Vic Elford. Very, very cool. Flip through this really quick. See, it's got cuttings and clippings from his career. You have this beautiful picture here of his Porsche, and it's just very, very cool. Really, really great artifact to accompany the watch that just brings it all together. This is absolutely something you will keep with the watch itself. Putting it aside now. Open it up, and then you just have the watch in this beautiful red kind of velveteen box here. I'm quickly going to show you the normal edition of the watch. Comes in this kind of camera-inspired lens kind of case that we've seen. Also, the Autodromo Lungos come in. It's also a really nice box, kind of a leatherish finish. Little flip snap there. Open that up, and then you have the watch in this kind of cool red interior on a little pillow. Very simple, but still a very, very nice box that I think you would definitely want to keep around as well. To wrap up, the Autodromo Prototipos are extremely cool watches that I've had a lot of fun wearing the last couple of weeks before this review. I think that the styling of these is just, they nailed it so well, and the look of those 60s, 70s chronographs that, in my opinion, really, really were kind of cooler. Those watches from that era are just so exceptionally interesting and kind of quirky and fun. They really kind of brought that personality back into these watches, yet made them original enough to not, feel like homage watches or anything like that. I mean, they're homage to an era, not to something specific, and that's really great. And I think, they speak for themselves. The level of refinement, the level of finishing, the quality, it's all top-notch here. They are a bit pricey for quartz watches at $625 for the Open Series and $775 for the limited edition, but I think that the added price there is totally from this level of quality of finishing and the originality of design, the fact that everything is manufactured, from the ground up. All the parts are original. That stuff is kind of priceless in the scheme of things, and these still come in at a very, very good price point. And just moreover, this is a watch that you'll be really satisfied with. It'll be very unique in your collection. So if you have an interest in, vintage Hoyers, in vintage chronographs, this watch is really, really going to speak to you and be one you're going to really, really enjoy for a long time. Please read the full review on Worn and Wound. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and Twitter. Thank you.